and welcome to the Thurso Show. My name is Marion and I am a Thurso Community Development Trust board member, and I'm joined this evening by Joan, Thurso Community Development Trust Development Manager. So we wanted to talk to you guys about our story of Thurso Community Development Trust from our formation to now. So Joan, can you kick us off and tell us all about it?
Might take us a little while to tell you all about it. We're actually going to lead to tell our member story, which when Catherine approached us, we're pretty sure, is to tell the story about how we've engaged with people and how we've come quite a long way in just quite a short 3 years with a global pandemic in between it. And hence why we thought we would do that and take you on a tour of everything that we've done in the style of the Thurso Show, which was the brainchild of Marion here. And it's one of the tools that we use to engage with the community. We've always been, it's a big thing to us to engage, but when COVID happened, we came across this idea for the Thurso Show, or at least Marion did, to just try and make everything a bit simpler. I'm going to let Marion explain just a little bit more about why we did what we did.
Yeah, I think it was important to all of us as we discussed. Things were coming out, information was coming out thick and fast, and it was scary. I think if we could all cast our mind back, it was scary. It was scary for our organisations and it was scary for the communities. So the Thurso Show allowed us to get the information that we needed out to our communities, but in a way that suited our organisation and suited our personalities, and tried to take a bit of that fear away from our communities by letting people know, well, we've got this. Sometimes we did, sometimes we didn't, but we just wanted people to know that we were there for them and they could come to us and we would do our very best to help. So that's kind of why we did it. And then it turned into a weekly thing. People were, like, members of the community were asking us about it, what's on next week. Like, it turned into a bit of a soap opera at times, but it was good fun, and it did really helped us with our engagement and helped keep us in people's minds within the community as the organisation to turn to for advice and any community support they needed throughout COVID.
And if you want to catch up with any back episodes, then we'll show the YouTube link down below. But yeah, that's what we're going to do today, because we're going to go out and about in Thurso. We're going to do a tour of our projects. We're going to do everything in the style of the Thurso Show, and tell the story of how we've engaged with our community.
Tonight things are a little different. You'll see Joan is wandering around Thurso River and our guest for this evening is Linda Moran. She's one of our brilliant cooks who will be volunteering to help us in the next stage of the community support. So Joan, where are you? If you could give us of these little episodes of the Thurso Show. So we do actually have a playlist on our YouTube channel. So if you search us on YouTube, you'll be able to see them all if you've not managed to catch up with them. So this week I'm joined again by Joan, our Thurso Development Manager, and we're also joined by Sarah Wilkinson, who is a psychology lecturer with North Highland College UHI. It's Mental Health Awareness Week this week, and the theme is #Kindness Matters. Welcome to what is quite an unexpected Thurso Show. We weren't planning one, but here we are. We weren't planning a lockdown either.
Hiya, and thanks for joining us again this week. I've no idea what week we're on, far too many. But yeah, tonight we are outside. We are at the Thurso Grows Community Garden here in
So, as you might have guessed, we are here in Shep Mackay's tonight. So we are joined by Angela.
No.
Oh shit, did that not work? Who's talking at your phone? Oh well. That's the first time we've messed up in 15 weeks. Ta-da!
Oh no, I forgot to start. The show is great, but not everyone is online. So we also have a community magazine, produced quarterly normally, but a special COVID issue was released, delivered to all homes across the area we were supporting, entirely by volunteers. 4,500 copies. That was after a similar leaflet and banner operation to all homes. But let's leave 2020 behind for a bit and let's go back to where we started in forming Thurso Community Development Trust.
So Joan, tell us, why a development trust for Thurso?
So back in 2017, there had been a little voluntary action group that formed that was called Pay It Forward Thurso, and it had been formed on the basis of just looking at a lot of the groups in the town with sort of older volunteers, things like that. There just seemed to be a sense of kind of community apathy in Thurso, and it was a bit of an experiment to see would people engage if there wasn't a committee that they had to sit on. So it was just about taking action. From that got lots of us doing things like digging the riverside, cleaning the riverside, or doing beach cleans, all of these sort of different things. And so people started talking about Thurso, and that has been a frequent war cry here, is somebody has to do something about Thurso. And so we went off to investigate two different options for Thurso. One was, when we're standing here in our town centre, was a business improvement district. The other was a development trust, but because town centre regeneration has always been something that's been quite high up there, but because there's lots of other issues going on in the town, like our main employer Dunray is closing down. They've been decommissioning since the early 1990s, and while the decommissioning process employs more people than what ever did when there was actually a nuclear power station putting power into the grid, that's not going to last forever. And we need to be a community that's got a more diverse economy. We're right on the edge. There's issues with mental health, there's issues with addiction, there's definitely issues with migration. We're forecast to have something like 21% depopulation by 2040. So there were a lot of other issues there. So it was then, let's go and pursue a development trust because we've got a much broader remit of projects that we can do. So we had a public meeting where Helen from Kindle Sutherland Development Trust came to speak to us. There was a steering group that formed, and from there we went out and we asked the people of Thurso what it is that they want for the town.
So Helen, Joan told us a little bit about the public meeting, and we asked members of the community what it was that they wanted. So can you tell us a little bit about what they came back to us with?
Okay, yeah, Marion, but I think I'll also explain that we really tried hard to consult with the community. We had several face-to-face meetings, we did an online survey, and we had paper copies as well available for people. And because of that, we had quite a good uptake as well. Now, it was quite clear, the response, the main priority for people in Thurso was a community hub. They were very concerned about the fact there was a lack of public space, and they had lost some of the public spaces previously, and they wanted something like that back again. Tourism was also a priority, because some of the community were recognising that traditional work was drying up and it was not going to be the future, and we really had to get ourselves organised to capture that potential tourist market. The other things they really wanted to see were improvements to the town. They felt that a lot could be done to make our town look better for people.
Making the town look better means we've run the Love Local, Love Thurso, getting people shopping safely. We've got our lovely Caithness dialect signs, and working with our local business people. They're part of our community, they're our friends, they're our family. Simple actions like putting up bunting, we've got an electronic notice board on the way, planters, and we have our town market.
This is us at our community market. We started this market, this is our fourth market. We started it as a means of giving the community something to come along to, a purpose to come out, and it's been really, really popular. We also have got a huge selection of different stalls from our local crafters and local businesses all coming along to sell things. We constantly are told by people how nice it is to come out, how nice it is to come and actually see other people, and it gives us a really good chance to meet people face to face and talk to them about the trust.
Helen just briefly mentioned ways in which we engage with the community. And really, that is take a step forward, Joan and Marion. Insert clowns here. Joan and I have worked together for such a long time, and we're actually stood in front of the building in which we worked for about 10 years. It's in the centre of town. It was open to the public, it ran as a museum for 10 years. In that time, Joan and I worked together on loads of things. We learned loads about one another and just how idiotic things could get. But in that 10 years, between us, we sat at reception, we spoke to people every day, and that was visitors to the area and our local people. And in those conversations, you get some really nitty gritty about
what should happen in a town, or what would be lovely to happen in a town. And those conversations were probably my favourite aspect of the whole experience. And we would have lots of late night conversations of, wouldn't this be cool, and let's give that a go. So
there
fast forward,
has
here
been
we
a lot
are.
of setting the town to rights over the years, both with people who stood at the front desk over the reception, or just us in the world to rights. But one of the main tools that we learned working there was, when you work for a community organisation, when you work for a museums in particular, museums were one of the first kind of third sector-ish charities who really embraced social media. Because we didn't have any money. There's no point in lying. Yeah, we didn't have any money. So yeah, we really embraced social media. So something like, I don't know, boomerangs, we've been doing them for 10 years. See, she's laughing because there's some really good boomerangs. Actually, there's a really good video of her in a frog costume.
We're not putting on.
But anyway, Viking festivals, like you name it, we had to do it, and we had to promote it all for free within that building. So when it then came time for us to do the engagement with the trust, we were well-kept faces, and we also took an approach which just drew people in, because we just spoke to people the same way that we speak to each other now, and had all of those conversations. And one of the other things that we've always done throughout, from that first consultation to where we are 3 years later, is, do you know what, it's okay if you want to disagree with us. Like, that's not an issue. Like, we're not afraid of somebody who wants to go all keyboard gangster, or who wants to disagree with anything that we're doing. But we just make sure we've got all the evidence, that we've got the majority of people behind us, and it's not even a defensive kind of position. It's, let's explain things. And I'm pretty sure that I haven't dealt with anybody in the 3 years that we've been doing the trust that we haven't been able to turn around. And we've had people that have been vehemently against what we've decided to do. You take somebody step by step by step through the process, and you take people on a journey. And that's actually what the route to is, taking people on a journey. We've grown and changed in the past 3 years, but we've taken the community on that journey with us.
Yeah, I think, as you say, Joan, that one of the most important things is talk to people in a language they understand. We've always seen reports, documents, it's all full of jargon and big fancy technical words. And for this particular community consultation, and all of the consultations we do, it's so important to engage with everybody in all different aspects of our community. And that's exactly what we do, that's what we did, and that's what we'll always do. And it's actually something I'm really proud of that we've done.
And we share successes and failures. When something's gone wrong,
Told ya.
when what, 18 months, no, maybe it was about 2 years ago now. Was it 2 years ago? I don't know, we've lost a year because of COVID. Where we applied for Investing in Communities funding and we didn't get it. And I think I cried for probably a good 48 hours. But we just went out and we told everybody that we hadn't got it. And we went for plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E. What happened to be our plan, probably F, was a global pandemic. But yeah.
I think, and that's another thing, we take people on the journey with us. You know, you could read something about your community and think, that sounds incredible, I can't wait for that to happen. 3 years later, you've read literally nothing else. Although we were unsuccessful, we told the community that, and we told them we were still working on it. We will not give up on you guys if you don't give up on us. And that's a big message from us to our community.
So on this whistle-stop tour of our projects, Discover Thurso was our first project. What's Discover Thurso all about, and how did we engage with the community?
Well, one of the many things that the original community consultation told us is that our local community wants to sell the town more to visitors. So I guess it feels like for a long, long time we've been a stopping point on the way to Orkney. We want to be the destination. So we're on the North Coast 500. We wanted to capitalise on that, and we wanted to empower our businesses and all those sorts of good things. So we developed the Discover Thurso project.
And we involved our community however we could. We made sure that they had a choice of the logos, the colour schemes. We ran workshops so that they were involved with the actual branding, and took them as far as we could along the way with us.
and as well as engaging the community on what the project looked like branding wise, we engaged with the hotels, B&Bs, businesses, all those sorts of things, ran workshops, as Helen says, in how to deliver to customers, to customer expectations and all that sorts of things. And that also gave us our very first member of staff. So yeah, that was good.
I would like to introduce you to Thurso Community Garden. It's absolutely luscious up here, and everything has grown just abundantly. It's amazing. The community consultation we talked about earlier, people mentioned that they would like to see more growing spaces, more community growing spaces in the town. Though the land they identified was really out of our reach. It was owned by a property developer, and there was no way we could afford that. However, we were offered this garden. Now it looked nothing like it does at the moment. It had just been left and was totally overgrown, but the people who had it felt that they had gone as far as they could, and they made us an offer that we would have been kind of daft to refuse. We were told that they would leave the shed if we took it over. Otherwise, if we took it over later on, they would have to take everything down. So we just kind of took a deep breath and dived in and decided that we would try. We had open days where we invited the community along to find out where people interested in having a community garden, what would they like to see growing, would they come along, would they be involved, and it looked to us very much like it would be a climate challenge fund project, and we started working towards trying to get that source of funding.
I think it's also a testament to how we did engage with that, because I'll show photos of what this community garden looked like beforehand. It's actually on the edge of Ormley housing estate, which is a known area of being in high SIMD. The group that was here before really had failed to engage with anybody within the community, and it had just gone completely to pot, basically. When we saw it, we immediately thought Climate Challenge Fund, but we obviously had a lot of work to do, and it was worth taking the risk. So I think probably the root of the success to Thurso Grows was really knowing what opportunities are out there in terms of funding and what you might be able to do, and also maybe sometimes just taking the risk for the sake of £200 insurance. It was worth us taking this space, and we had an amazing project over 2 years with the Climate Challenge Fund. Obviously it's come to an end, but we've secured now 2 years worth of lottery funding for Thurso Grows for this community garden space, and we'll show you what we're up to now, that will where we're looking to actually earn an income, that once that lottery funding exits, that actually we've got a sustainable project here because it's propped up by a social enterprise. But it also it took forward really that we're doing climate action, but because it was very obvious you're funded by the Climate Challenge Fund. Anybody who's been funded by the Climate Challenge Fund before knows everything works with a caveat, funded by the Climate Challenge Fund. But actually our strategic plan, rewinding back to when we put that together, it has climate embedded throughout it, from very, very simple actions like you wouldn't attend an event with us pre-COVID and get a disposable cup. We went to composting cups initially, then we realised that they're just as bad for the environment, so we started trying to find mugs in charity shops. We try to embed climate in absolutely everything that we do so that it is easy and it is accessible for everybody. So, talking about climate action, where are we now, girls?
Well, we're at the shaving shed. One of the ways that we thought we can, one of the easy ways to do something about climate change is not to waste food. So one of our projects to help us along is our sharing shed, where people can put extra food that's not required, in there, and those struggling a wee bit can come and take it.
This was actually one of their projects that we went to, I can never say it, the Highland Council Participatory Budgeting event. Joan and I went with a presentation, crikey, that was a long time ago now, and that's actually one of the first times that I messed up royally, because I messed up half the presentation, but that's another story for another day. But here we are now, a couple of years down the line, we've got our shed, it's up and running, it's run by volunteers, Some of those people are shed users that we're actively trying to encourage, and some of that is us as board members as well. And that gives us a really great method of communication to members of the community that aren't on the board and wouldn't be usual volunteers. But we've got a great relationship with the team and things are ticking along nicely.
They are.
We've spoken a lot so far about how we've engaged with our community, but that works in parallel with the other work that goes on. Whilst we do a huge amount of engagement with the community, whilst we are not afraid to act like clowns, getting into the sea, doing this, that or the next thing, we do all sorts of things like some of the things that we haven't mentioned. We do lots of fundraising activities prior to COVID. So coffee mornings, we did a New Year's soaking, we did Thurso's Got Talent. All of these things are opportunities for us to engage what the trust is and what we're all about, whilst also entertaining people and getting people along for some fun. But the more serious side is that we work really closely with networks and other partners. So particularly our Community Planning Partnership, we're a really strong voice within the Community Planning Partnership. That work kind of started in 2019, where we did, we'd already done that big consultation, and we had sort of 20% of the population of Thurso who had answered it, but we knew that we didn't have, some of the other voices hadn't come forward, the so-called hard to reach. We don't really believe that they are hard to reach. We believe that agencies, organisations, that they're actually the ones that are hard to reach. If you have meet somebody on the street and you start saying, what's the crack, what's going on, they're usually quite happy to have a yarn to you. But that's what we did in 2019. We went out and we had yarns with all of these people. We went to where they were. We engaged with them. We got to what the so-called quiet voices. We did a huge amount of work speaking to young men. We took all of that work to the Community Planning Partnership. We were helping to shape services. We were getting ourselves involved in lots and lots of different networks, so climate action networks, Highland Third Sector Interface. There was all of that day job work that was going on behind the scenes. And all of that work stood us in really good stead, because when March 2020 happened, we had a network that was there and that was ready to go. So would you two ladies like to talk about March 2020?
Yeah, it was, I guess like anybody, and I think we've mentioned briefly before that March 2020 was actually a really frightening time for many in the community, and not just many in the community, for us as an organisation as well, and I'm sure anybody else that was involved in any kind of community support where you're working, there all of a sudden felt a very strong pressure on us as individuals and our organisation, because we had gone from working out what people wanted and then trying to make that happen to actually, this is serious, it's happening now, and people's lives are at stake. And that felt quite frightening for us, but it also was frightening for the community. So for us to pull together really, really quickly, put plans in place and engage back to the community that everything from our side, we can help with this, this and this, and it will be a smooth operation as best as it could be, while trying to insert the lightheartedness that we had worked on previously. So that's when it was Mother's Day last March. I think we were just starting to mention the phrase social distancing. So Joan and I are stood about 6 foot apart, roaring at one another, and an explanation and video that we were sending to volunteers to say this is how we would deliver shopping. And Joan was Betty, and I was the volunteer, and we had such a laugh, didn't we?
We did have such a laugh. I think mainly because we were trying things out at where our old office was at Thurso Youth Club. And for the first time that Marion came along and knocked on the door and I answered the door as Betty, she had no idea that Betty was about to emerge.
No.
Okay, our next scenario is Betty comes to the door. She's going to see her shopping there, and we are going to have a slightly different conversation.
Oh, hello, Marion. Is that my shopping? Thank you very much. You want to come in for a cup of tea, Marion?
I'll no come in, Betty. I've got to keep a safe distance. I'll keep us both safe and healthy.
Oh, that's all right then. Oh, well, I'll maybe give you a phone sometime and we can have a natter on a phone then. Thank you very much, Marion. Thank you.
But I I think when you cast your minds back, like we didn't, nobody knew what was happening. Not us as an organisation, not us as individuals, our own friends and family, our own safety. But we knew that something needed done, and we knew that the community were going to look to us. We had put ourselves in that place, and we wanted ourselves to be there. We wanted to be the ones that helped, but it just we didn't realise just how much we would be needed. And that's then, so it was the day after lockdown we started the phone system, wasn't it, Helen?
Yeah, that was an experience. We've all been on a huge learning curve. It was major, especially for people
some of us more than others.
Yes. I really didn't think I was going to manage this, but anyway, we had volunteers. The community was amazing. They stepped up remarkably. I take my hat off to these people who just came forward and said, yes, we want to help. So what we had to do was make sure that we harnessed all this eagerness, but made sure it went where it was needed. And so we set up a call line. We had a virtual call centre which was manned by volunteers, and we had an army of people who went and did shopping, collected prescriptions, walked dogs, took trees out of rivers, the most bizarre things that came forward. But most importantly, we were on the end of a phone for a lot of very, very scared, vulnerable people. I still remember, talking to people, and they were absolutely petrified. They didn't know what was going to happen. They had no idea they didn't know how they were going to get their shopping. They didn't know how they were going to survive. They were very, very scared. And also, the other end of the tether were these feisty 80-year-olds that were insisting to me that they were going to get on a bus and go and visit their brother or somebody. And I said, no, my dear, no, please don't. We kept those phone lines going until, November? Or September, October? Anyway, we talked to people weekly for a long time, for months. We really got to know some of these people, and they got to know us as well. I used to be amazed if I was on a different shift, because we worked a shift. So we ran these phone lines to begin with from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. Then as people got a bit more confident, as things eased up a bit, we cut the phone lines down, but we certainly kept them going. But if I did a shift at a different time, I would get asked where the person who should be answering the phone was, because, well, for a lot of people, we were the only voice they were hearing. Sometimes I had to keep reminding myself of that. Perhaps this is the only person that this individual is getting to speak to this week.
What it also very clearly brought out to us is that we knew that there was social isolation in the community already. And I actually remember saying to somebody from the Community Planning Partnership, I think once we were about a month into it, was, we spent all last year trying to find these quiet voices, these people that were experiencing social isolation, and we couldn't find all of them. They're on our doorstep now. And which in a way has been sad that happened, but actually has made for a much more engaged community and has brought people together. And it's certainly, I think, just as, I can't remember which one said it, Marion or Helen, that we were kind of 18 months into being an organisation, and we had lots of plans for everything that we wanted to do, and we were kind of just beginning to work it all out. And in the last 18 months, we are, with and without doubt, the community anchor organisation for our town. So much so that where the trust, so us as a trust, we operate just within the confines of the town, but we ended up being the community anchor for our two neighbouring community council areas, and actually covering half of Caithness. And just the upsurge in networks, the Caithness Resilience Network has won awards. Me and Marion won awards.
So we did?
Yeah, we did. From Housing Third Sector Interface. But because there was such a coordinated approach over Caithness, we all knew what each other was doing. We stayed in our lanes, we all helped each other, and it's a really good network that continues since, because we're now doing work collaboratively across Caithness and improving mental health and well-being. We're now into a new phase of the Community Recovery Fund, where we're delivering outreach activities and things like that, so that we can get some equity across the county. And yeah, it has really brought us to the front, which also brings lots of work our way.
I think as well, like, we've spoken a lot about the people who we supported, which was our priority throughout the process, but it also brought in so many volunteers. And that was actually at one point something that I was thinking, I've volunteered for a long time with a lot of organisations, and I've never experienced such an influx of people wanting to help.
Yeah.
And that came with its own challenges and its own learning curve. We had people that you wanted to engage with, you wanted to get them involved, more money than I've ever seen come flying towards an organisation ever, and things. I mean, that photograph of me in my Fiat 500, I couldn't see out the back window for toilet paper. And I remember putting the photograph on the social media, and it, like, everybody was going bananas about how hilarious it was. But you know, we were getting food, toilet paper, money, like, where were we going to store this stuff? Where is it safe to go? You know, where at that stage you weren't allowed to go out your house.
Yeah.
You know, how were we going to maneuver all these things while keeping the volunteers' spirits up? We wanted to keep them engaged, and that all came with its own challenges. And again, like, the volunteering stuff, that gave us more connections with the community. Some of those volunteers are still with us today in other aspects. Some of the community members that we supported have led us to fundraising activities with national comedians that raised us $3,500 on an evening on the internet.
Probably Daniel Schloss.
all these things. And one of the other exciting things, not exciting, maybe silver lining is the best way to put it, was the amount of expats that were all over the world but had family members here that were vulnerable.
Yeah.
They reached out to us, and at that stage we were managing the social media between us, Joan, and messages would come in all times of day, all times of night. People were worried about their grandmas, their aunties, their uncles. Whereas then when we come back to them and say, what's their phone number, we'll give them a buzz, or tell them to phone us, we were able to put minds at ease all over the world. And that meant that then donations were coming in, well wishes were coming in, and it really was so heartwarming that there is a silver lining after such a terrible time. I think for us as individuals and as an organisation, we were so well received, which was lovely.
Yeah, I better give a special mention to Daniel Schloss because Catherine told us to. So one of the things that we very firmly believe as well is that if you don't ask, you don't get. And we always knew that Daniel Schloss had connections to Thurso. There was little hints through community support, and that myself and Marion would pick up, and it was like, oh, look, we've just done that for that person. Is that enough for us to ask Daniel Schloss to do a fundraiser? Not quite yet. And then we delivered a Christmas dinner on Christmas Day, and we thought, that's it, we've done enough then. We can go for Daniel Schloss. And that's what we did. We asked and we got, and he did a live Twitch for us. Raised us about £4,000. It was amazing. He was very drunk. It was right up our street, just our kind of type of entertainment. It was amazing.
Hello, I'm Daniel Schloss, international celebrity, worldwide famous comedian, and no, didn't believe that, fair enough. I'm a comedian from Scotland, and I would spend at least 3 weeks of every year growing up in Thurso. It's where my grandparents lived. It's where my grand still lives. I sincerely love Thurso, and during this pandemic, a lovely organisation called the Thurso Community Development Trust have been helping the local community, which includes my gran, taking them to get their vaccinations, giving them food, spoon feeding them tapioca, I don't know what, they've been doing good things, very, very good things. So as a thank you, I'm going to try and raise a little bit of money for the trust by drinking. It's the only talent I have outside of stand-up.
But just talking about volunteers that have stayed with us, so whilst we've been doing community support, we're also doing community recovery, and we're doing recovery as an organisation as well. We launched into community support with not very much money in the bank. Like, I only had a contract until the end of March. Yep. We just did it. We didn't think about it. We were having hot meals on the day that I got the phone call from Highlands and Islands Enterprise to say that the Scottish Government had actually awarded us funding to do the meals. At which point I said, it's a really good thing that you're saying that because I've got 100 meals going out today. We did crazy things. There was Helen and our treasurer Carl thought that maybe the banks would close, would collapse actually. And there's a very good photo of what they went and did. Put it this way, there was some cash that was returned to the bank once we realised the banks were not going to collapse. It was kept in a safe in the meantime. But yeah, so a lot of those volunteers who came to us via COVID, who saw what we were doing, they've stayed with us. And through them staying with us, we've got some that are more committed, that want to be more involved in the organisation. So on the back of that, we've now formed a community benefit society, and we are sitting in our new offices, which our offices are upstairs. We are starting a zero waste refill shop downstairs. We are taking greenhouses and an asset transfer. And again, it goes back to this climate change, that we're embedding climate change into everything that we do. We're basically finding climate projects, which were also projects that will earn us money, and just trying to take that different approach. We've certainly found, in terms of, so we're switching from COVID to climate and recovery, but we've certainly found that we have just the best conversations about what to put in your bin, don't we? And lots of other people like having those conversations as well. It's guaranteed. We get a few people together in a room now that we're beginning to be post-COVID. We'll start talking about what goes into your recycling bin. It's just about guaranteed. And so the way that we kind of done climate is, do you know what, we're confused. You're maybe confused as well, but let's sit down and have a conversation about it. But also, how can we start to do things like get Thurso more plastic free? Then we start a zero waste refill shop. How can we get more local food into the supply chain? We take over greenhouses. And that kind of work that we've done is because climate change is so linked to inequalities as well. That has now got us that, when I said that there's more work coming to us, that we are piloting one of the Scottish Government regional climate action hubs. So what's happening with that, Helen?
Yes, we're going to employ more staff.
Yes.
We're going to employ more staff, and we're going to run a pilot for 6 months to find out how best we can engage with the Highland community, what works, what sort of things work, what doesn't, and get a kind of baseline of information, and then hopefully the project will continue for at least 3 years.
Yeah, but I think one of the reasons that we've mainly that we were chosen to do this was because of the way that we've engaged with the community, and also because of the way that we don't, that to me, if you say that an event is about climate, we will get people who are already engaged in climate coming along to it, whereas actually so many climate action projects are actually a route to solving inequalities. So we're going more with the inequality approach, and actually, do you know what, come along and get this mended, or come along and grow fruit or vegetables or whatever. And that's the activity that you're doing, but by default you're actually helping climate action as well. So this pretty much concludes our whistle-stop tour of the past 3 years of Thurso Community Development Trust. When myself and Marion and Helen recorded most of what we did it a couple of weeks ago, and at that stage in here was chaos. It still kind of is chaos. We've got boxes all over the place, but we are starting to look more like an organisation and an office. And Councillor Carl is here with me today. So Carl has been with us since the very start, since those Pay It Forward cleanups, and he is now the chairperson of the new Thurso Community Benefit Society. So I'm just going to hand it, just in our last couple of minutes, to Carl to give a wee roundup of what he feels we've achieved in the past 3 years.
Thank you, Joan. So look, my perspective, and I go back probably over 4 years ago, just having a simple conversation with Joan and asking her what she thought about a development trust. The answer was she would love one. And you know, that journey, when I think then we had engagement in the community, we from that point were able to establish Thurso Community Development Trust. Crucially, for me, something I'll be eternally grateful for was because of that Presence Way Trust, we were able to respond to COVID pandemic. And then from that point, we have been fortunate enough in securing a lease for a town centre premises that gives us a visible presence in town, which is absolutely fantastic. And then it's the future, really exciting for me. So that's my perspective. I'm really excited about the whole thing.
So that's the end of us for now, but you can ask us lots of questions, and I'm hoping that there's going to be some waiting. We're really looking forward to the next 3 years, and we hope that we can come back and speak to you again at another DTAS conference. The next 3 years for us holds that we are starting our retail premises, we are starting our greenhouses facility, and those things will make us hopefully much more of a sustainable organisation and less reliant on grant funding. And that goes hand in hand with the work that we're going to be doing with the Regional Climate Action Hub for the Scottish Government. And it really feels that we're in a position now where we always had this vision in our first 5-year strategic plan that came from that initial community consultation, that we were going to start pulling all of these threads together to address inequalities, to promote localism, to promote the town centre, and to be a sustainable organisation, and actually to take action against the climate emergency as well. All of those threads are now kind of pulling together, and we're really looking forward to the next 3 years. Thank you.
Yay!
I'll leave that in.
So do you want to just go straight in with, Helen mentioned a big community consultation, and that's where us pair of clients come in.
I think that's pretty much it. Yeah.
And then we can say, we used to work in this building.
Yeah, and just go, there's literally nothing that we won't do for the trust. Does this look fine on the camera, by the way, with both of us standing there?
You know, that background is not good. You look like you're in a public toilet.